running back position is always loaded in the SEC. We've got another slew to break down here in 2020. We need some help from Brent Beard. You can join him on First Coast News and also College Sports Today, 9:30 a.m. Jacksonville. Brent, how you doing today?
Well, I'm doing well, Mark. Always good to be with you. And look, this running back, we tried to limit it to 5, Mark, but we could go to about 15 in running backs.
That's probably how many I've got listed here. It's crazy because I will let you take the floor first because I'm going to follow your lead on this one. I've got my 5, but I could certainly be persuaded otherwise.
Well, my number one guy is Najee Harris from Alabama. Harris comes back. He could have gone to the NFL. It was a deep NFL running back draft, so he decided to come back. I think that was a smart move. 5.86 yards per carry, caught 27 passes. I think that's where he grew up, Mark, as much as anything else, is his receiving ability, I think, has improved tremendously since he's been at Alabama. He was obviously much heralded running back when he came into Alabama, and as anywhere else, it takes some time. Where he has improved is with his blitz blocking and his receiving. Mark, you remember the end of the Michigan game? He was carrying players for probably way beyond a first down in that game. And maybe one of the true offensive highlights of the game, you remember in the South Carolina game where he catches the pass and hurdles the defender and gets into the end zone. So number one for me was Najee Harris.
Yeah, one of the great plays in college football, one of the great individual efforts, the play you mentioned by Najee Harris against South Carolina, racked up 1,300 plus yards, 13 touchdowns in what is always a crowded Alabama backfield. Najee Harris gets my call at number 1 as well, even though Trey Sanders, hey, he's going to be an elite player most likely. Right. 5-star has already predicted he's going to win the Heisman Trophy. Freshman, but Najee Harris may take a few carries away from him, or maybe about 250 away from him. All right, the number 2 spot for you, Brent.
Well, my number 2, maybe a little bit of a surprise, but we've already mentioned this guy, would be Kylan Hill at Mississippi State. This is a guy who had 242 carries last year, can catch the ball coming out of the backfield. And I think what's so exciting for this guy, and it was something that we have talked about, Mark, with quarterbacks, if Costello ends up being the quarterback, the Stanford transfer, and with Mike Leach, what he could do for this guy. Now, listen, how many carries and catches, Mark, do you think Hill could have on an average game along, and what a weapon he will be with Mike Leach by the time the year is over?
Well, let me tell you, Max Borges, a running back at Washington State, who is a fine football player, but does not have the speed and elusiveness of a Kylan Hill, and I believe he caught 85 passes last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think we could see something similar before it's over. So Hill, there are going to be a few of those Sundays where the SEC Offensive Player of the Year is going to have his name on it.
Absolutely. Kylan Hill, Mike Leach offense should be a whole lot of fun to track that one. I actually did not put Kylan Hill in my top 5. And again, I said this off the top, I could be persuaded to move number 12 up to number 3.
Really?
I've got so many backs listed here. But I got Rakeem Boyd of Arkansas, who I have to admit, consider the plight of Arkansas football in the last 2 to 3 years. I did not see a whole lot of Rakeem Boyd football last year because you're trying to track 7 and 8 games a day, and Arkansas is usually not coming up on that. This kid ran for over 8 yards per carry in November against the best competition on the schedule. And you talk about offensive fit with Hill and Mike Leach. Well, Kendall Briles makes his way to Fayetteville. Maybe he does some interesting things with the Texas A&M transfer, Rakeem Boyd.
Yeah, look, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think Boyd is maybe the most underrated running back in the league. I think he is that good. He is an A&M transfer, and he made a name for himself last year, as Mark mentioned, 8 yards a carry in November. Now, listen, the reason that's important, most backs in November get tired, but overall, his average was like 6 yards per carry, 8 in November. Really impressed with him, and no doubt, Mark, he was the star of that team, and he could really take advantage at this point of what Arkansas could do with Felipe Franks and Kendall Briles. Look, Briles is a good play caller and can develop these guys on offense. So really excited to see what Boyd's going to do this season.
All right. So where did you have Boyd ranked?
Number 3. I got him right after Hill. Yes.
Okay. Hill at 2, Boyd at 3. Who's your 4th rated guy?
Well, the 4th rated guy is a guy that we don't talk about very much, but his name is Larry Roundtree out of Missouri. He is a workhorse, 829 yards, 9 touchdowns. Hey, Mark, if you sent an email out to a bunch of SEC fans, where would Larry's name come up as far as in the well-known running backs? But I'll tell you this, defensive coordinators in the league know who he is without any doubt. So, listen, Roundtree is a kid that if he stays healthy by the end of the year, he can make a real difference with them. He's actually my number 4. Harris is 1, Hill's 2, Boyd 3, and Roundtree is number 4. But again, and basically, Mark, when you add up the yardage, he is either the leading returner or basically the leading returner running back in the league.
Yeah, folks, I misled you on the number 3 ranking for Roundtree. So I'm hosting the show, trying to throw up these graphics as Brent is spitting them out, and I was 1 behind on that one. But Larry Roundtree, here's an interesting stat. We've got 4 running backs in the SEC who return with over 2,000 yards from scrimmage last year. Larry Roundtree, Kylan Hill, Najee Harris, and Rakeem Boyd would be those 4.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Who rounds out the top 5 for you?
And we've mentioned him a little bit before, but Isaiah Spiller from Texas A&M would be my guy, nearly 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. And you think about what Jimbo could do with this guy as he continues on with them, an improved offensive line, Kellen Mond at quarterback. Spiller, I think, could have a big year that is coming up. And frankly, Mark, if A&M is going to do what they want to do, he's got to have a big year, does he not?
Yeah, came up with a decent season last year with 10 touchdowns on the ground for Texas A&M. Of course, Travion Williams was one of my favorite backs.
No doubt.
The last 5 to 10 years of just watching just a guy run with a football. So that's what Spiller's replacing there in College Station. But, I'll make the disclaimer, like with Mond, he may have played the toughest defensive schedule in the country,
maybe
trying to rack up that yardage. So a difficult assignment for Isaiah Spiller as Texas A&M tries to reach the top ranks of the SEC Western Division. I had some wild card selections here at the back half of my top 5 here with Zamir Zeus White, Georgia, top-rated running back coming out of the country as a 5-star, had the 2 torn ACLs, one he suffered in high school, one during the offseason as an early enrollee at Georgia, so we haven't necessarily seen his best, but he ran well down the stretch, and including the Sugar Bowl effort against Baylor.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And Zeus is incredible when he's healthy. Everybody I've talked to at Georgia have said if he ever has a healthy year, it's really going to be amazing to see what he is going to be able to do. Mark, my biggest struggle here was after 5 because I'm with you. And I'm going to throw some names out and just let you dovetail with some of this. Jerron Ely at Ole Miss, nearly 7 yards a carry, even better than Scotty Phillips at Ole Miss, who had 4.3. What about Eric Gray at Tennessee, the last 2 games, nearly 400 yards, and the potential that this kid has got. And look, people better not laugh at this, because Kavorsky Smoke and the Rose kid at Kentucky are a great tandem to be looking at that point. And another guy, Mark, who is a real wild card, but I think could be the next really good back at Auburn, is this Tank Bigsby that's coming in, who they recruited. So, Mark, did we? And you mentioned Trey Sanders from Alabama too, but so did I think that perked your ears up, because you're probably on the same line that I am. Well, we could have gone 14 deep without any trouble, right?
Yeah, so you are producing my segment here, Brent, because you pretty much went in exact order of where I was in my list, because I had, after Zamir White at 3, Jerron Ely from Ole Miss with the same basic scouting report that you outlined. The kid's a game breaker for the Rebels at number 4. Eric Gray, the game he put on tape against Vandy to conclude the season, where he had 366 yards from scrimmage, 246 on the ground. He's a 3-time Mr. Football in Tennessee. And then he won the Gator Bowl MVP against Indiana, down by 2 scores. They come back in the 4th quarter as a freshman. And so they're 4 and 5 for me. And then Rose and Smoke. You know, we'll have to come up with a catchy nickname for those two as a combo backfield for the Wildcats. But along with Terry Wilson, they're going to be run heavy. They're in Lexington. And Marshawn Lloyd's a good back with South Carolina. You mentioned Bigsby, the top-rated running back coming out of high school that was signed by an SEC school. And we still haven't even touched on those LSU backs. Emory, Curry.
Really? Yeah.
Tyrion Price Davis. They're all over the place. And that's typical SEC football at the running back position.
Well, and listen, you mentioned Eric Gray a few minutes ago. If my memory serves, and I was at that game here in the Gator Bowl, I think he recovered the onside kick that allowed them to get the ball back. But I mean, he showed what they could do. And again, this would be a sermon on another day. But I tell you, the potential, Mark, if Tennessee can find a quarterback that they can depend on with that offensive line and these running backs, they could be pretty good over the next 2 or 3 years, could they not?
Absolutely, they could. And again, we're not going to run through all the names, but man, Georgia's got a stable of running backs. Yeah. We just cut a segment that was posted with the quarterback top 5 that Brent and I both love. Kyle Trask is the top-rated quarterback in the SEC, and he did not have the support of a running game. How good he was last year. So Florida's going to look to get more production out of its running back position. And Ty Chandler at Tennessee. It goes on and on and on and on. Brent, we appreciate you stopping by to break down the top running backs in the conference.
Well, listen, the main thing is, Mark, we're talking ball right now. That's really all that matters, my friend. And hopefully we're going to be talking some real ball soon when they are able to get into practice and get the schedule going. We don't know what it's going to be. Our prayers for everybody to stay safe at this time. And by the way, one thing people can look forward to, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this real quick, but I know on June the 2nd, Athlon is supposed to be coming out. And then, Lenny's is going to be somewhere in there, Phil Steele too. So being a long-time college football magazine connoisseur, I wanted to mention that because there'll be a lot. I know they got to put all this stuff together kind of blindly this year without a spring practice, but that will be some wonderful reading on the beach for all of us at some point this summer, won't it, Mark?
And depending on a decision that's handed down here in the next week, we'll find out if the athletes are going to be on campus in the SEC right about that same time.
Yeah. And again, we're looking for June 1st or June 15th, either or. And look, Mark, that when I saw that, what encouraged me was it was kind of either or. So it was going to be the 1st or the 15th that we're going to be on campus. So that's good news.
That is tremendous stuff out of Brent Beard. Delivers for us each and every time. Always appreciate the conversation. College Sports Today, and also First Coast News. Brent, you have yourself a great weekend.
You too, brother. Always good to be on with you. Thanks so much.